Good Sunday morning. I'm Don Kerrigan from News Center, Maine, with this week's Political Brew, joined by our veteran analyst, Democrat Ethan Strimling, Republican Phil Harriman. Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Quite a week, dominated really by the one-year anniversary of the Russian attack on Ukraine, which obviously triggered lots of U.S. involvement, lots of things to unpack here. First of all, Phil, I'll start with you. I don't know if it even seems like it's been a year, but how do you sum up what's happened?
Well, in two ways. Friday was the one-year anniversary of this invasion by Russia, and what we have seen is the heart and soul of the Ukrainians is amazing, and the support they have garnered around the world. Although I would say the U.S. support has been disproportionately larger than others, but nonetheless,
Maybe not surprising.
Yeah, well, they've demonstrated that they're not going to give up, and it's just a matter of time, I think, before Putin has to realize that there is no win here. He's got to find a way to call it off at halftime, so to speak.
It doesn't seem like he's reached that point
but
yet.
He's got to.
Yeah, tenacity, Ethan, would certainly describe the Ukrainian people on this. What's your take?
Yeah, the tenacity of the Ukrainian people is remarkable, but I do think it's important to understand that it's the international community that has rallied around them that has allowed them to survive. They would not survive if the U.S. had not done as much as it had done, if all the countries that have been helping out had not done as much as they have done and must continue to do, which is why I think people around the world are very supportive. I mean, this is a clear incursion that we no longer believe in the world that should be allowed. And Putin is a very, very dangerous man, and I'm glad, honestly, we have somebody in the White House who's actually willing to stand up to him in the way that he needs to be stood up to, the way most presidents have, unlike our former president, unfortunately.
Well, I figured that was coming in there someplace, and we don't know what would have happened if he had invaded a couple years earlier. Let's talk first of all about U.S. President Biden went to Kiev and to Poland to restate U.S. support for Ukraine. Was that the proper role for the U.S. president to go and do that? Ethan, you first.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first time a president's ever gone into a war zone that was not controlled by the U.S. military. Courageous on his part, and an important signal to the Ukrainian people that the United States and the international community is not going to abandon them, and we're going to be there. This is going to become Putin's Vietnam or Putin's Afghanistan, which is was happened to Russia if they don't stop. And good for the president for showing such courage.
And Phil, Putin this week made some pretty strong comments to the Russian people, had his own big State of the Union type of event, and then big public rally showing that, at least according to him, not only is he not going to give up, but he's going to raise the stakes by pulling out of the nuclear arms treaty.
Yeah, that just shows you how desperate he is, and I want to make sure the record is clear that Putin, under Obama, invaded in Ukraine. He didn't during Trump, and he has now during Biden. So I think Biden's physical presence there, reassuring NATO and the border countries and making it clear that Putin is not going to prevail, was the right thing to do.
How much does Putin's statements worry you?
Oh, I think we all have to be mindful that this is, as Ethan says, this is a very dangerous man who's on a mission to re-establish the old Russia. And he's obviously a narcissist because he's not paying attention to what the rest of the world is trying to tell him.
Yeah, he's more than a narcissist. And I just want to be clear about something. Look, Obama stood up to Putin, was very clear about it. And then we saw 4 years of a president who was placating him and empowered him, got him stronger and stronger and stronger to where he felt like he could get to a place where he could then invade. And now the international community, he thought he was going to walk in and this would be a piece of cake. Right. After 4 years of the Trump administration, he got stronger. He's now being shown under the Biden administration that's no longer going to last.
However, we are seeing, at least by polls, increasing opposition to U.S. funding of this on the part of the American people. Is that worrisome? Ethan, you first.
Increasing. It's still majority support in the United States, and it's strong. And it's a small plurality that says we shouldn't be doing it. Are there more people who are undecided about it? But that's what always happens. But a majority of the American people absolutely stand with the Ukrainian people. Even in Maine, you go around, you can still see Ukrainian flags in people's windows. I mean, we are a country that really believes in making sure that people who are the underdog are not wiped away.
Yeah. It just seems to me that the American public is supporting the Ukrainians, no question about it. But I also think they're beginning to ask, well, what's the end game? What's the definition of success? How much more money are we going to put into this campaign?
Is that a proper question to ask?
It
and
is.
Does it mean those people are not as eager to stand up for freedom?
No, I think it's a matter of when you have billions of dollars going over to Ukraine and we can't get the resources to Ohio for a train derailment, tells people a lot about what the priorities are in the administration.
Which brings up our next topic. The train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, in a lot of people's minds has shown a lack of federal government response. EPA's been there, the National Transportation Safety Board has been there, but top U.S. officials, like the Secretary of Transportation, have not been there until this week. Phil, do you think, did the Biden administration drop the ball on this, or was it not their place to be there right away?
I don't know if they underestimated the significance of what happened there, but clearly once the news reports showed that environmental explosion, literally, you would think that they would have said, let's get as many people on the ground, putting their arm around the people, making sure they have assurance that their health care and their environment is going to be top priority. I think they've got it now, but boy, it took them 2 weeks.
Ethan, do you think they were slow?
Look, there's always more you can do when you're looking back at it, but I'd love to know what resources Phil was just talking about that should be diverted from Ukraine to East Palestine. The resources are there on the ground. What this administration has not done, which I commend them for, is politicize this. What the Republican Party has done, I mean, honestly, Donald Trump, who is not an elected official, Rudy Giuliani, these are the people who are showing up, Marjorie Taylor Greene, these are the people who are showing up. These are not officials who actually can do anything to help. They're politicizing the situation for their own political gain. The administration has said, no, we're going to have the right people on the ground. The Secretary of Transportation did get there, and that's the right response. Now, look, the issue fundamentally is about safety within our train. We have got to regulate this industry much stronger, and that's where the Republican Party understands. They simply have not been in support of stronger regulations around safety.
And railroad regulation has been an issue for years and years, right?
Right, well, it's the administration's opportunity to write regulations. Biden's had 2 years to write regulations if he felt that what Trump had done was inappropriate.
We talked national, let's talk some main issues right now. Governor Mills and her administration this week sort of releasing their roadmap for how to proceed with developing offshore wind power in the Gulf of Maine, even though, of course, most of that added development would happen outside of Maine waters. The fishing industry still pretty worried about it. Recognizing that this is a long ways in the future, probably other than an experimental wind turbine, probably 10 years. Ethan, I'll start with you. How important is it for the administration to stake out its territory and its plan right now?
Very important. I mean, one of the goals that she mentioned in her State of the Budget address is trying to make sure that, we get off of fossil fuels and into renewable energy by 2040. Offshore wind is going to be one of the most important pieces, and I commend her for coming forward with a strong plan, protecting, the waters, protecting our environment, making sure that workers who are doing this are qualified, well paid. These are the kind of values that you want to see put forward, and protecting the fishing industry. I think she's doing a good job of finding that balance. So I really commend her. This is an important, vital step for us as we move off of fossil fuels.
Phil, do you agree with that?
I do, actually. I think she has, she got the pulpit again after the election. She's made it clear that this is one of her objectives, and I compliment her for putting out a blueprint. Now, going from the schematic design, if you will, to the actual construction, there's a long, wavy road ahead.
Yes.
A lot of forks.
Might be some chop in those seeds as they come out. And do you think that the general public is paying attention to this? Do they really, are the general public buying into this yet?
I think the public is supportive of finding additional capacity for energy that doesn't use fossil fuel, but we're still in an environment, at least in my view, that we need all of the above. And as our economy grows, we're going to need more energy. And so, yes, I think they're not paying attention to the details, but I think they generally support the concept.
Same question to you, Ethan. Do you think so?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think they're paying attention to the details at all. I think they look to the Mills administration, who won strongly, to say, okay, we trust that she's going to put forward a good plan. But us converting, getting off of fossil fuels in order to fight climate change, Maine people are overwhelmingly in support.
Yeah. Senator Angus King has gotten into some controversy. I don't know if he stirred it up as such this week, because in 2018, his campaign reported what they thought was some suspicious social media activity to Twitter, and it ended up having 300 social media messages reported as being possibly suspicious for varying reasons. What do we make of this to start with? Phil, I'll start with you on that.
Well, I think it's important to remember that campaigns are about hearing each other's ideas and positions, and it appears that Senator King used his position as a sitting senator, member of the Intelligence Committee, to use that gravitas, if you will, to silence about 300 people. And I think,
did it silence them? They didn't take it down,
well, I don't think they silenced him, but I think there was clearly an indication that he was using his authority to limit their abilities. And I'll give him credit for stepping up to the microphones earlier this past week and explaining what his campaign did.
Yeah, Ethan, I'm thinking you see it differently.
Yeah, I mean, look, as somebody who's been the target of nasty anti-Semitic abuse on Twitter, I've reported people, and you should report people, but let's understand what happened here. When they had some of that kind of unfactual stuff, video being put out there that was doctored, they reported it, and Twitter asked them, tell us who else you think might be disseminating information that you think is inappropriate. And they said, well, here's 300 that we have. And then let Twitter go from there. Didn't make follow-up calls, wasn't badgering them to try to do anything. It was actually good policy on Twitter's part and good policy on his part. If Twitter had called me after people I've reported came to me, said who else, I would have told them.
But here's the question. Where do you draw the line between just opposition material, posting whatever on social media, and something that's suspicious?
Well, that's
because campaigns have posted opposition material even as letters to the editor for years.
Sure, but that's the job of Twitter. Twitter asked him what information out there, who out there do you think is sending stuff that you think is inappropriate, and we'll look at it. And Twitter, as you said earlier, decided on a case-by-case basis, and mostly on almost all of them, said, yeah, we're not going to stop it because that's free speech from our perspective. Yeah. So,
Phil, final thought.
Well, it's sort of like you, Don, going out and doing a story. You have to bring back the information and decide what you decide to put over the airwaves. I don't think that criticizing the Breakey campaign for choosing what information to put out there is somehow worthy of his account being under observation.
Mm-hmm. And in political fundraising, the Maine Republican Party sent out an email to supporters this week and probably some other social media forms as well, looking to raise money in response to the situation with Representative Collmore having to resign, Democrat having to resign from the legislature over forging some names on clean elections documents. The Republican Party did not reference that one of their candidates also got in trouble, an unsuccessful candidate got in trouble for a similar thing. What do you make of this? I mean, is this going to become an issue in the coming election, or is it just a momentary way to seize on something to raise money, Ethan?
Look, it's a momentary way to raise money. There's no doubt about it. And of course, they're being hypocritical. That's kind of how politics is. And I would certainly say their side of the aisle a little more than the other, but we've got it on our side too, for sure. And you know what? What Collmore did was really inappropriate. And the Republican Party has every right, in all honesty, to raise money off of that. If they're attacking the clean elections program, something that most of their members use, that's even more hypocritical from my perspective. Yeah. But is it fair game? Sure.
Phil?
Well, they should have pointed out that this is, it's not just a one-way street here. But it also emphasizes how important it is for all candidates to understand the clean election law and abide by it.
Right. Okay, winners and losers this week. Phil, you first.
My loser this week, Don, is the Norfolk and Southern Railroad. Their response in Ohio is just an embarrassment. And my winner this week is Maddie Ripley from Oceanside High School. Okay. She was the first young woman to win the state wrestling championship.
By defeating a male.
By defeating a male.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome,
Ethan.
awesome story, and thanks for bringing up the railroad industry. We didn't even talk about them earlier. My winner of the week is Bangor and South Portland, who are both now putting forward important tenant protections. You know, with our housing crisis, a lot of tenants getting squeezed. They're doing a good job trying to move forms of rent control forward, rent caps, et cetera. My loser of the week, landlords in the city of Portland right here are trying to put forward a referendum that is actually going to allow them to raise the rent as much as they want on any new tenant. That would be devastating to our affordable housing crisis.
All right. Thank you both very much. Busy week coming up for sure. We'll be back next week with more Political Brew, and News Center Maine continues right after this.